Hey guys, Tech Agent, we're back with a pretty special headphone this time, a vintage. This is the Beyerdynamic DT220 1976. Now everybody knows the legendary DT770, but from where did that concept come about? Beyerdynamic had a DT48, which was a pretty successful closed-back headphone. It was selling well, and they really didn't have a reason to replace it. So why did Beyerdynamic launch a DT770? Well, to answer that question, we have the DT220. Now, in 1976, when Beyerdynamic launched the 220, I'm pretty sure they had no intention of killing off the DT48, but they obviously wanted the 220 to be a successful headphone that would probably lead to the discontinuation of the DT48. But unfortunately, that did not happen because the 48 was just a favorite among the brand, and it was the best-selling closed-back headphone. If you wanted open back, people bought the which came after some years of this headphone, the 880. So the 880 was the favorite when it comes to open back headphone, and the 48 was a favorite closed back headphone. So the 220 was in the middle, and it was a forgotten headphone. Nobody bought it, and because of that, Beyerdynamic killed it off. It was a very brief run in this headphone. Why? Because, well, it did not sell well. After the 220 was discontinued, Beyerdynamic launched the 770, which was based on a very successful 880, which was selling amazingly. It was just closed back. So the 770, as we all know, became to be one of the most successful and the best-selling Beyerdynamic headphone, and it was the most important headphone for the brand. So that headphone has done a lot for the company, and the 220 was the first attempt, into getting into that market and getting into that segment of a closed back, full size. Circa model full-size studio headphone. So now this headphone is having an impedance of 400 ohms, so it's a fairly high impedance headphone, but it's pretty sensitive, so efficiency is not an issue. Comfort on this headphone is is okay. Build quality is very typical Beyerdynamic from the time. The ET1000, which is again 1976, feels slightly high quality because of the slightly better plastics and ceramics used in the construction, but this doesn't feel bad. It's just not as good as the ET1000 from the time, so that's something to keep in mind. Another thing which was quite fascinating is that Beyerdynamic from the factory, because back in the day, if you wanted to buy a headphone, you couldn't go online and just purchase the headphone. You had to send the company a mail, and you can special order it, and they will ship all over the world. So Beyerdynamic offered 3 types of connectors, and on top of that, Beyerdynamic also provided a TRS connector, adapters. So you got a DIN connector, DIN to 3.5 or quarter inch, and that's how my pair came. It was a DIN to a 3.5, and then a 3.5 to a quarter inch. So there's a lot of adapters that came in the box, which I'll show you guys in the B-roll. But that's how the amount you got 3 connectors, and all of them were not TRS, which is pretty funny. The ear pads are divided into 2 sections. You have a middle baffle. You can say it's very similar to a DD48, which just has this foam layer, and then you have the outer vinyl ear pads. One thing to note, and I'll show you guys in the next video, is that Beyerdynamic launched a headphone called the Studio, which was based on the DT220 from the time. It was a one-off version. Not many of those exist. It's a very rare headphone, and I think there's no post of that headphone anywhere online. I'm the only guy who has posted on Headfire, so it's a very rare headphone. I'll be making a video on that pretty soon, but that was a one-off DT220, and that had the baffle plate that I talked about. In that case, was a solid rubber baffle plate. This is a foam on top of a pleather, so that's something different among those headphones, which aids to a slightly different frequency response. Now, speaking of the build qualities, you can see these markings. This is not exactly etched into the housing. It's an aluminum sheet which has just this part printed on it. So if it comes loose, it's gonna break, which has happened on my case. So I just glued it back again, and there's a slight crack, but this is an aluminum very thin sheet with a printing Beyerdynamic DT220 and the left and right lettering. So that's a printed aluminum plate. Overall, this headphone it's a pretty significant headphone. Because of this, we have the venerable 770, we have the 1770, which is an evolution of the 770. So this entire series of headphones started because of this headphone, the DT220, which was a failure, but in a way it was a success because it led to the launch of the 770, it led to the launch of the 1770, and these headphones are legendary. They have a legendary status, and they will always be a very important headphone for the brand because of the 770. I think Beyerdynamic company that it is today wouldn't be what they are if it wasn't for the 770, if it wasn't for the DT48 and the microphones that they make, because these were the headphones that sparked the success in the company. Overall, I really like the 220. It's a very funky headphone. I like it. It's interesting. I'll be making a video on the Studio soon, the one-off 220, one of the rarest headphones in my entire collection. So stay tuned for that. I'll see you guys next time with more headphones. All right.